The first thing I noticed after Eric died was how quickly the vultures descended. Not the metaphorical kind, the designer-clad, perfectly manicured variety that wore Chanel No. 5 and called themselves family. I'm Sadie, and 3 days ago I lost my husband. Today I'm watching his mother and sister commandeer my home like it's their divine right. "Darling, these curtains simply must go," Josephine announced, running her fingers along the silk panels Eric and I had chosen together. "They're far too modern for a proper estate home." I stood in the doorway of my own living room, clutching my coffee mug like a lifeline. The funeral was barely over, and already they were redecorating. Blair, my sister-in-law, was sprawled across my favourite armchair, scrolling through her phone with practised disinterest. "The curtains stay," I said quietly but firmly. Josephine's head snapped towards me, her steel-grey hair catching the morning light. "Oh, sweetheart, you're clearly not thinking straight. Grief does terrible things to one's judgment. I said they stay." My voice didn't waver. Blair finally looked up. "Mum's right, you know. This whole house needs a proper renovation. It's what Eric would have wanted." My fingers tightened around the mug. Funny, considering Eric picked everything in this room himself. "Well, he always did have questionable taste," Blair muttered, loud enough for me to hear. Before I could respond, Madison appeared behind me, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. Thank God she'd stayed after the funeral. "Sadie, honey, Benson's here to see you. Something about the estate papers." Josephine practically levitated from her seat. "The family lawyer? I'll handle that." "Actually," Madison cut in smoothly, "he specifically asked for Sadie." In Eric's study, Benson looked uncomfortable, his usual confident demeanour replaced with something more hesitant. "Mrs. Kent, there are some matters we need to discuss privately." "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of family," Josephine interrupted, having followed us in uninvited. Benson's eyes met mine briefly. "Perhaps we should reschedule." "No," I said firmly. "This is my house, and I'd like to speak with Benson alone." The look Josephine gave me could have frozen hell. "Darling, you're clearly overwhelmed. Let me handle the legal matters. After all, Eric would want me to handle my own affairs," I cut in, surprising myself with my steadiness. "Please leave." After they finally left, Benson lowered his voice. "Josephine called me this morning. She's pushing for temporary control of the estate, citing your emotional instability." My stomach dropped. Can she do that? "She's trying, but there's something else." He hesitated. "Eric left specific instructions about his personal safe. Said you needed to check it immediately after the funeral." The safe. I'd almost forgotten about it, hidden behind the painting in our bedroom. Eric had never shared the combination with me, claiming it held boring business documents. Later that night, after Josephine and Blair had finally retired to their guest rooms, I stood before the painting. The combination came to me suddenly. Our wedding date. Simple, sentimental, Eric. Inside was a single envelope, thick and heavy. On the front, in Eric's familiar handwriting, were the words that made my blood run cold. "If they come, play the video." My hands trembled as I held the envelope. Even from beyond the grave, he'd known. He'd known exactly what would happen. A floorboard creaked behind me, and I quickly tucked the envelope into my robe pocket. Blair stood in the doorway, wearing one of my silk nightgowns. "Looking for something?" she asked, her voice honey-sweet with malice. "Just remembering," I replied, closing the safe and replacing the painting. She sauntered closer, twirling in my nightgown. "It's funny, isn't it? How life changes so quickly. One day you're the lady of the manor, and the next—" She trailed off meaningfully. I met her gaze steadily. "The next?" "The next, you're just a widow who needs help managing it all." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Don't worry, Sadie. We'll take good care of everything." As I lay in bed that night, the envelope burning a hole in my bedside drawer, I realised something that should have terrified me, but instead filled me with an odd calm. This wasn't just about grief anymore. This was war. And my late husband had apparently left me ammunition. Madison arrived early the next morning, bringing coffee and a sympathetic ear. We sat in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones, while the sounds of Josephine, reorganising my living room, drifted in from down the hall. "They're literally taking over," I whispered, clutching my coffee. "Yesterday, I found Blair wearing my clothes. Today, Josephine's replacing my family photos with her own. Madison's eyes narrowed. Have you talked to Benson about this? He's coming for dinner tonight. Josephine insisted on hosting a family meeting. I made air quotes with my fingers. Whatever that means. It means they're making their move, Madison said flatly. You need to watch that video. The envelope sat heavy in my pocket. I'd been carrying it around all day, afraid to leave it anywhere Blair might snoop. I know. Just what? What if it makes things worse? Madison leaned forward. Honey, how could it possibly be worse than watching these vultures strip away your life piece by piece? Before I could respond, Blair burst into the kitchen, wearing another one of my dresses. Oh good, you're both here. Mum wants everyone in the dining room at 7 sharp. We have important matters to discuss, she smirked. Wear something appropriate. The dinner was exactly as awful as I'd expected. Josephine sat at the head of the table, my spot, where I'd sat beside Eric for 6 years. Benson looked uncomfortable, pushing food around his plate while Josephine held court. It's clear to everyone that Sadie needs help managing the estate, Josephine announced, dabbing her lips with my grandmother's linen napkins. As Eric's mother, I feel it's my duty to step in temporarily. Temporarily? I echoed. Just until you're more stable, Blair added sweetly. We've all noticed how scattered you've been. I'm not scattered, I said firmly. I'm grieving. There's a difference. Josephine reached across the table to pat my hand. I resisted the urge to pull away. Darling, just this morning I found you staring at that safe for nearly an hour. It's not healthy. My head snapped up. They'd been watching me. I've already drafted the paperwork, Josephine continued, nodding to Benson. Just a simple transfer of executive control. For your own good, of course. Of course, Blair echoed, helping herself to more wine, my wine, from Eric's private collection. That was it. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood. Excuse me, I need to get something from upstairs. In my bedroom, I finally pulled out the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a USB drive and a note. If they're watching with you, say nothing. Just press play. I grabbed my laptop and headed back downstairs. Without a word, I set it up on the dining room sideboard facing the table. Sadie, dear, what are you doing? Josephine's voice had an edge to it. I pressed play. Eric's face filled the screen. My heart clenched. He looked so alive, so recently there. He was sitting in his study, wearing the blue shirt I'd given him for his last birthday. If you're watching this, he began, it means I'm gone, and my mother and sister have already moved in. Josephine's fork clattered to her plate. Sadie, my love, Eric continued, I'm so sorry I had to leave you with this mess, but I know you're stronger than they think, stronger than even you think. He leaned forward, his expression hardening. Mum, Blair, if you're watching this too, understand something. I knew. I knew about the attempts to access my accounts. I knew about the conversations with lawyers about having Sadie declared incompetent. I knew everything. Blair's face had gone white. Josephine sat frozen. So I made arrangements, Eric continued. The will has been changed. The accounts have been secured. And if anything happens to Sadie, anything at all, everything goes to charity. Every penny. The silence in the room was deafening. Sadie gets full control. That's non-negotiable. And if either of you tries to challenge it, there's more evidence waiting to be released. Evidence you really don't want public. He softened again, looking directly at the camera. At me. You were always the strong one, my love. Show them why. The video ended. Benson cleared his throat in the silence that followed. I have copies of the new will here, he said quietly, pulling papers from his briefcase. Would anyone like to review them? Josephine stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. Without a word, she stormed out. Blair remained staring at me with naked hatred. This isn't over, she hissed, standing up. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I met her gaze steadily. Actually, I think I do. And Blair, that's my dress you're wearing. I want it back by morning. The morning after the video revelation, the house felt different. The silence was charged, dangerous. I found my dress, the one Blair had been wearing, crumpled in a wet heap in the garden. Real mature. Madison arrived with breakfast and raised eyebrows. How bad was the fallout? Josephine hasn't left her room, I said, accepting a coffee. Blair's been making passive-aggressive phone calls in the garden for hours. They're planning something. Obviously, I sighed. But what? We didn't have to wait long to find out. Around noon, Josephine emerged, perfectly composed in a tailored suit. She settled into the living room like nothing had happened. "Sadie, dear," she called out. "Come join me for tea." Madison squeezed my hand. "Want me to stay?" I shook my head. "I need to handle this." In the living room, Josephine was already pouring tea into my best china. "Sit, darling. We need to talk about this unfortunate situation." "There's nothing unfortunate about it," I said, remaining standing. "Eric made his wishes clear." "Did he?" She smiled thinly. "Or did someone influence those wishes during his final days, when he was vulnerable?" My blood ran cold. "What are you suggesting?" "Only that grief can make us see things that aren't there. Make us do things we wouldn't normally do." She sipped her tea delicately. "Like manipulating a dying man's will, perhaps." "You're unbelievable." "No, dear. I'm practical, and I have excellent lawyers." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and something flickered across her face. "Worry?" She stood abruptly. "Excuse me, I need to take this." She hurried into the hallway, but not far enough. Her whispered conversation carried clearly. "What do you mean they found it?" "No, destroy everything. I don't care what it costs, just handle it." I moved close to the door, straining to hear more. "If this gets out, no. You listen to me. I didn't spend 30 years building this family's reputation to have it destroyed by some gold-digging widow." The call ended. I quickly retreated to the living room, my mind racing. What had they found? What was she trying to destroy? Blair burst in moments later, her face flushed. "Mum, we have a problem. That investigator is—" She stopped short, seeing me. "Never mind." "What investigator?" I asked innocently. "None of your business," Blair snapped. Josephine returned, her composure slightly cracked. "Blair, darling, let's continue this discussion upstairs." "No need," I said, standing up. "I'll leave you to your secrets, but remember, Eric said he had evidence." "Are you sure you want to test what that means?" Blair's face contorted. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Playing the grieving widow while you plot and scheme." "Projecting much?" I shot back. "Enough!" Josephine commanded. "Sadie, since you're so interested in evidence, perhaps we should discuss the medications Eric was taking near the end, the ones that might have affected his judgment when making certain decisions." My stomach dropped. They were really going there. "Or maybe," Blair added, "we should talk about those late-night visits from that handsome lawyer while Eric was in the hospital." "Benson is married," I said flatly. "And gay. Try again." "It doesn't matter what's true," Josephine said smoothly. "Only what people believe. And people love a scandal." I was about to respond when Madison appeared in the doorway. "Sadie, Nicholas is here. He says it's urgent." Josephine's teacup clattered against its saucer. In Eric's study, Nicholas, the private investigator Benson had recommended, laid out several photographs. These were taken last week, before Mr. Kent's death. The photos showed Blair meeting with various men in expensive suits. The timestamps aligned with Eric's final days in the hospital. "And this," Nicholas said, sliding over one last photo, "was taken at the hospital's pharmacy." The image showed Josephine talking to a nurse, passing something that looked suspiciously like an envelope. "The nurses agreed to talk," Nicholas added quietly. My hands shook as I gathered the photos. When I returned to the living room, Josephine was on another call, her voice urgent and low. "Whatever it takes," she was saying. "Just make it disappear." She saw me and froze. I held up the photos. "Make what disappear, Josephine? The evidence of tampering with Eric's medication? Or the proof that you were planning this takeover before he even died?" The phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. Behind her, Blair's face had gone ashen. "You want a war?" I said quietly. "Fine. But remember, Eric warned you, and I'm just getting started." Benson's office felt like neutral ground, though the tension in the room was anything but neutral. I sat across from him while he reviewed Nicholas's findings. "This is serious," he said, spreading the photos across his desk. "If they were tampering with medication, can we prove it? The nurse is willing to testify, but Sadie..." He leaned forward. Are you sure you want to go down this road? These women are dangerous. They're trying to destroy me, I said flatly. I need everything you have. He pulled out a thick folder. Eric left this with me, said to give it to you if things got ugly. He hesitated. It's going to get ugly. The folder contained bank statements, emails, and surveillance reports. Blair was drowning in gambling debts. Josephine had been siphoning money from family accounts for years. There's more, Benson said quietly. Josephine has a substantial life insurance policy on you. My blood ran cold. On me? How is that possible? Eric added you to the family policy years ago. If anything happens to you, accident, suicide, mental breakdown, Josephine collects millions. A knock interrupted us. Madison entered with Nicholas, both looking grim. Show her, Madison said. Nicholas placed a hotel surveillance photo on the desk. It showed Blair meeting with a man in an expensive suit. That's Marcus Reynolds, Nicholas explained. He specialises in having people declared mentally unfit, usually wealthy widows. He's expensive, Madison added, which is interesting considering Blair's broke. Not broke enough, apparently, I muttered. Actually, Nicholas pulled out more photos. These were taken an hour after that meeting. The images showed Blair at an ATM, looking distressed. Multiple declined transactions. They're desperate, Benson concluded, which makes them dangerous. My phone buzzed. A text from the house security system. Someone was accessing Eric's study. I need to go, I said, standing. They're searching the house. Don't confront them alone, Madison warned. I won't, but I need to see what they're looking for. I arrived home to find Blair frantically rifling through Eric's desk drawers. She froze when she saw me. Looking for something? I left a bracelet in here, she stammered. Try again. She straightened, dropping the pretense. Fine. Where's the rest of it? The rest of what? Don't play dumb. The evidence Eric mentioned. Where is it? Safe, I said simply. Very safe. Her face contorted. You think you're so clever. Poor little Sadie playing detective. No, I'm playing survivor, and I'm winning. Are you? She stepped closer. Because right now, Mum's meeting with doctors who are very concerned about your mental state. Grief can make people so unstable. Is that before or after she meets with Marcus Reynolds? Blair's face went white. How did you... I know everything, Blair. The gambling debts, the failed attempts to access Eric's accounts, the life insurance policy. You don't understand, she whispered. You have no idea what it's been like watching you live the life I deserved. The life you deserved? I laughed bitterly. You mean the life you couldn't earn? She moved to slap me, but I caught her wrist. Careful. Assault charges wouldn't look good in court. You bitch! Blair! Josephine's voice called from downstairs. Did you find it? I released Blair's wrist. Better go. Mommy's calling. She backed toward the door, her eyes wild. This isn't over. You're right, I agreed. It's just beginning. After they left, I called Madison. They're looking for something specific. The nurse called, she replied. She's ready to talk. Tomorrow morning. Good. Because I just found something interesting. I held up a small notebook I'd spotted fallen behind Eric's desk. Inside were dates, amounts, and coded names. I think I know where all that missing money went. Be careful, Madison warned. If they're desperate enough to search the house. I know. I looked at the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. But I'm not the only one watching anymore. The notebook felt heavy in my hands. Tomorrow the nurse would talk. Tomorrow more pieces would fall into place. And tomorrow Josephine and Blair would learn exactly how much evidence Eric had collected before he died. The nurse Sarah met us at a quiet cafe across town. Her hands shook as she stirred her coffee. They'll ruin me if they find out I'm talking to you, she whispered. They won't, Nicholas assured her. We've taken precautions. Sarah glanced around nervously before speaking. It started small. Mrs. Kent, Josephine, would ask questions about Mr. Kent's medication schedule. Then she started suggesting changes. Changes? I leaned forward. Timing adjustments, mostly, making sure he was less lucid during certain visits. Sarah's voice cracked. I should have reported it. Why didn't you? She pulled out an envelope. Because of this. Inside were photos of her teenage daughter. They knew where she went to school, what route she took home, My stomach turned. They threatened a child. They're monsters, Sarah whispered. But I kept records, dates, times, conversations. She slid a small notebook across the table. It's all there. Back at the house, Josephine was waiting in the foyer. Lovely morning for coffee with friends, isn't it? I froze. How did she know? Blair saw you, she explained, examining her manicure. Quite a cosy little meeting. Just catching up with old friends. Really? Because it looked rather conspiratorial. She stepped closer. Darling, you're not well. All these paranoid meetings, these wild accusations. We're worried about you. Right on cue, Blair appeared with a concerned expression. We only want to help. Like you helped Eric, I shot back. Josephine's face hardened. Careful, dear. Grief can make people say such regrettable things. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. It's done. Check your email. I smiled. You're right. I'm not feeling well. In fact, I think I need to lie down. In my room, I opened my laptop. Madison had sent security camera footage from the cafe. Every angle of Sarah's confession recorded in perfect clarity. Another message popped up from an anonymous email. Leave the house now. This is your final warning. I forwarded it to Nicholas, then heard shouting downstairs. Following the noise, I found Blair screaming into her phone. What do you mean denied? Try again. I need that money. She saw me and quickly hung up. Ever hear of privacy? In my house? Absolutely. Her eyes narrowed. Not for long. The doctors are very concerned about your mental state. Paranoid delusions, erratic behaviour. Funny, I have doctors too, with very different opinions. You think you're so smart, she snarled, but you have no idea what's coming. Actually, I do. I held up my phone, showing the cafe footage. Say hi to Sarah. The colour drained from her face. She rushed upstairs, calling for Josephine. Minutes later, I heard their heated whispers from the study. She knows everything, Blair hissed. Calm down, Josephine replied. The hearing is tomorrow, once we have control. It won't matter. She has proof. Then we'll have to move faster. Call Marcus. Tell him. I deliberately made the floorboard creak. Their conversation stopped abruptly. Don't let us interrupt, I called through the door. I'm sure Marcus Reynolds has lots of experience making evidence disappear. Silence. Then Josephine emerged, perfectly composed. Darling, you're obviously unwell. Hearing things, making accusations. Save it for the hearing, I said. I'm sure the judge will be very interested in Sarah's testimony. What judge? Josephine smiled coldly. The emergency hearing is tonight. Didn't Benson tell you? My heart stopped. That's not possible. Money makes many things possible, dear. She patted my cheek. Do try to dress appropriately. First impressions matter so much in these cases. They swept past me, leaving me standing there. I immediately called Benson. They moved the hearing, I said when he answered. Tonight. Impossible, he replied. Unless, hold on. I heard typing. Dear God, they got Judge Harrison. He's notorious for fast-tracking conservatorship cases. Can they do this? They're trying. But Sadie... He paused. We have something they don't. What? The truth. And about 20 witnesses ready to tell it. I ended the call and found a new email waiting. Everything's ready. Let them make their move. Emma. Game on, I thought. Let them try their emergency hearing. They had no idea what kind of emergency was coming their way. The courthouse hallway buzzed with tension. Josephine and Blair huddled with their expensive legal team, while Marcus Reynolds smirked in my direction. I sat alone, deliberately appearing fragile and distraught. Where's your lawyer, dear? Josephine called out sweetly. Surely Benson didn't abandon you. Right on cue, the courthouse doors burst open. Benson strode in, followed by Madison, Nicholas, and a parade of familiar faces, including Sarah the nurse, clutching a thick folder. Josephine's smirk faltered. What is this? Witnesses, I said simply. Judge Harrison's clerk appeared. The judge will see all parties in his chambers immediately. In the judge's chambers, Reynolds launched into his presentation. Your Honour, we're deeply concerned about Mrs. Kent's mental state following her husband's tragic death. She's been erratic, Blair chimed in, dabbing fake tears. Making wild accusations, seeing conspiracies everywhere. Speaking of conspiracies, Benson interrupted. sliding a file across the judge's desk. Your Honour, we have evidence of systematic medication tampering during Mr. Kent's final days. The judge's eyebrows shot up. Serious allegations, Counsellor. With serious proof. Benson nodded to Sarah, who stepped forward. I have detailed records, she said, voice shaking. Dates, times, specific medication changes requested by Mrs. Josephine Kent. Josephine stood up. This is absurd. You can't possibly... sit down, the judge ordered. He reviewed the documents, his expression darkening. Mr. Reynolds, did you know about these allegations when you filed for emergency conservatorship? Reynolds tugged at his collar. Your Honour, these are clearly fabricated. Like these bank records. Nicholas stepped forward, producing more documents. Showing systematic draining of Mr. Kent's accounts. Or perhaps these photos of your private meetings with Miss Blair Kent? Blair's face went white. That's invasion of privacy. No, I finally spoke. That's evidence gathering, which my husband started before he died. The judge leaned back. Explain. I played Eric's video on my tablet. The judge watched in silence as my husband detailed his suspicions, his evidence, his plans to protect me. When it finished, the room was deadly quiet. Your Honour, Reynolds tried again, a man's video testimony after being improperly medicated is perfectly admissible, Benson cut in, when supported by hospital records, witness statements and banking evidence, all of which we have. Josephine stood again. This is a witch hunt. We only want to protect your inheritance, I interrupted, or the life insurance policy you took out on me. The judge's head snapped up. Life insurance? Nicholas provided those documents too. The judge reviewed them, his face growing stormy. Mrs. Kent, Josephine, he clarified. Did you really think you could bring an emergency conservatorship case to my court while hiding these conflicts of interest? Your Honour. Save it. He closed the files. This hearing is dismissed. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into potential criminal charges. Blair burst into tears, real ones this time. Josephine remained stone-faced. This isn't over, she hissed as we left the chambers. Actually, it is. Madison appeared with 2 police officers. These gentlemen would like to ask about certain financial transactions. I watched as Josephine and Blair were escorted away for questioning. Reynolds slipped out during the chaos, but Nicholas just smiled. Don't worry about him, he said. The Bar Association is very interested in his recent activities. Back home, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single note in Blair's handwriting. You think you've won? Watch your back. Some accidents can't be prevented. I showed it to Madison and Nicholas. Perfect, Madison said. One last piece of evidence for the restraining order. And the criminal investigation, Nicholas added. I sat in Eric's study that night, surrounded by the evidence that had saved me. My phone buzzed with a text from Benson. Josephine's being held for questioning. Blair's credit cards are frozen. The house is yours again. Another text followed from Nicholas. Security system upgraded, 24/7, monitoring in place. And finally from Madison. You did it, girl. Eric would be proud. I touched the photo of Eric on his desk. He had known they would come for me, known I would need protection, but he'd also known I was strong enough to fight back. The house felt different now, quieter, safer, but I knew better than to relax completely. Josephine and Blair might be down, but they weren't out. Not yet. But for the first time since Eric died, I wasn't afraid. Let them try their worst, I was ready. The courthouse was packed for the final hearing. 3 weeks had passed since the failed conservatorship attempt, and now everything would be decided. I sat with Benson, watching Josephine and Blair enter in handcuffs, their designer outfits replaced by wrinkled court clothes. All rise, the bailiff called as Judge Harrison entered. Before we begin, the judge announced, I want to address the additional evidence submitted this morning. My heart stopped. What additional evidence? Josephine's new lawyer stood. Your Honour, we have proof that Mrs. Kent manipulated her husband's final days. Security footage from the hospital shows me reading to my dying husband, I interrupted, my voice steady. Would you like to see the audio that goes with that footage? The lawyer faltered. Benson pulled out a USB drive. The hospital's security system records audio, Your Honour, he explained. including Mrs. Josephine Kent's conversations about medication adjustments. Blair jumped up. This is ridiculous! She bewitched my brother, turned him against his own family. Sit down, her lawyer hissed, but Blair was beyond control. She's the one who should be in handcuffs. She stole everything from us. The money, the house, Eric's love. That's enough! Judge Harrison's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Miss Blair Kent, one more outburst and you'll be removed. Nicholas approached the bench with a thick folder. Your Honour, our forensic accountant's final report. It details every unauthorised transaction, every attempted account access, and every suspicious insurance policy change. The judge reviewed the documents, his expression hardening. Mrs. Josephine Kent, would you care to explain these transactions? Josephine stood, still managing to look regal despite her circumstances. Everything I did was for this family's legacy. Eric was being influenced by his wife's love, I cut in, by my desire to take care of him while you were trying to control his money. You know nothing about family, she spat. You're just a gold digger who has video evidence of your confession, Benson interrupted smoothly, holding up his phone. Recorded last week during your jail phone call with Marcus Reynolds. The colour drained from Josephine's face. The judge had heard enough. Based on the overwhelming evidence, this court finds the following. All claims against Sadie Kent are dismissed. The estate remains under her full control, as per her husband's legal will. Blair started sobbing. Josephine remained stone-faced. Furthermore, the judge continued, given the severity of the financial crimes and attempted fraud, I'm referring this case for criminal prosecution. Bail is denied for both defendants. You can't do this, Blair shrieked as officers approached. We're family. We're blood. Blood doesn't excuse criminal behaviour, the judge stated firmly. Remove them. As they were led away, Josephine turned to me one last time. You'll regret this. Family always finds a way. You're not family, I replied calmly. You never were. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Madison appeared, running interference while Benson led me to a waiting car. It's over, he said softly. Is it? I showed him my phone. Another anonymous text. You destroyed our family. Watch your back. Empty threats, Nicholas said, joining us. They're going away for a long time. The evidence is overwhelming. Speaking of evidence, Benson added, there's something you should see. Back at the house, he played one final video from Eric. This one had been hidden deeper, triggered only by a full legal victory. My love, Eric's face filled the screen, healthier than in the previous video. If you're watching this, you've done it. You've protected yourself, protected our life together. I'm so sorry I had to leave you with this burden. Tears filled my eyes as he continued. I knew they would come for you. They've always been jealous of our happiness, our love. But I also knew you were stronger than they ever imagined. You proved that today. He leaned closer to the camera. There's one last gift. Check the safe again. The combination has changed to the day we met. With trembling fingers, I opened the safe. Inside was a letter and a key. A new beach house, Benson explained. He bought it secretly, in your name only, somewhere to start fresh. The letter contained one line. Build the life you deserve, my love. They can never take that from you. Madison hugged me as I cried, not from sadness this time, but release. What now? She asked softly. I looked around the house, our house, where so much love and pain had lived. Now? Now I honour Eric's last wish. I build something new. Through the window, I watched the police car carrying Josephine and Blair disappear around the corner. They thought they could break me, control me, destroy me. Instead, they made me stronger. And now, finally, I was free. The beach house stood pristine against the setting sun, waves crashing against the shore below. I'd finally decided to see it, to touch the last gift Eric had left me. Madison whistled as we pulled up. He really knew how to pick them. He knew a lot of things, I said softly, turning the key in the lock. Inside, the house was everything Eric and I had ever dreamed about. Open spaces, wall-to-wall windows, a kitchen made for entertaining. On the counter sat a dusty envelope with my name. Another video? Madison asked. I shook my head. Just keys. And an address. The address led us to a storage facility nearby. Inside the unit, we found carefully organised boxes, each labelled with dates and contents. He documented everything, Nicholas said, joining us. Years of evidence against them. Financial records, photos, recorded conversations. But why keep it here? Madison wondered. Because he knew they'd searched the house, I realised. He needs somewhere they'd never think to look. My phone buzzed. Benson. Turn on the news. The local station was covering the sentencing. Josephine got 15 years for financial fraud and conspiracy. Blair got 8, with mandatory psychiatric treatment. They're actually going to prison, Madison breathed. They're not the only ones. Nicholas held up his phone. Marcus Reynolds just got disbarred. The nurse they threatened? Her testimony broke open 3 other cases of conservatorship fraud. I sat on a storage box, overwhelmed. Eric didn't just protect me. He exposed their whole operation. Speaking of exposure, Madison pointed to a box labelled insurance. Inside were documents revealing similar policies Josephine had taken out on other family members who had died mysteriously. The police will want these, Nicholas said quietly. Back at the beach house, I found one last surprise. A hidden panel in the master bedroom contained a journal, Eric's private thoughts during his final months. My darling Sadie, it began. I know you're reading this in a safer world than the one I left. You've faced them, fought them, and won. But winning isn't enough. I needed you to understand why. The pages detailed years of manipulation and abuse. How Josephine had controlled the family through money and fear. How Blair had been shaped into her mother's weapon. How others had tried to stand up to them and failed. But you, he wrote, you were different. You loved purely, lived honestly. Everything they hated, everything they couldn't control. That's why I knew you'd be the one to end their reign. Not with their tactics, but with truth. Madison found me crying on the balcony. You okay? He knew he was dying, I said. He used his death to set all this in motion. To protect me, but also to free everyone they ever hurt. He loved you that much. No, I smiled through tears. He trusted me that much. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from the prison. Blair wanted to see me. Don't go, Madison warned. But I went. Blair sat behind glass, prison jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. I needed you to know something. What? You didn't win, she spat. You just played your part in Eric's grand plan, like a good little puppet. I laughed. Actually laughed. Is that what you think? That I was just following instructions? Weren't you? No, Blair. Eric gave me tools. I chose how to use them. He gave me truth. I chose to wield it. That's the difference between us. You let your mother puppet you. I chose my own path. We're still family, she tried. Blood. Blood isn't family, I cut her off. Love is family. Truth is family, something you never understood. I stood to leave. Wait, she called. What happens now? Now? I live. I build something new. And you? I met her eyes. You live with the consequences of your choices. The beach house was full of friends when I returned. Madison, Nicholas, Benson, even Sarah and her daughter. They'd prepared dinner, opened wine, filled the space with laughter. A toast, Benson proposed, to Eric, who saw the truth, and to Sadie, who made sure everyone else saw it too. I raised my glass, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. Eric had given me weapons, yes, but more importantly, he'd given me the strength to choose how to use them. They underestimated me because I wore grief like a shroud. But grief, when sharpened by love and truth, cuts deeper than hatred ever could. And now, surrounded by real family, I was ready to build something new from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. Something honest, something true, something they could never touch.